Hey everyone, Adam here. Before we get into our episode, I just want to say a few things. I didn't know Sarah Crowley before this interview, and we hopped on Zencaster and just went over a few bullet points beforehand, and it was just we were chatting as well, and it was just super fun. Just automatically connected with her, and she's really rad. Not only that, I mean, she is top level, world champion, multiple Ironman championships underneath her race belt, and an endurance legend. She's been doing this for quite some time, and we talk about how all that happened. We talk about the history, we talk about her training, her ups and downs, and we talked about how she made some really big changes in order to take it to that next level. We talk about flow and how to win, and it's a really cool interview. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Meanwhile, we do talk about a cool little challenge that one of her sponsors is putting out here this week. And so be sure to listen through the whole episode and to the very end, because there's a little guest appearance by Jeremiah Bishop to talk about the DIY try that is happening here September and October. So if anyone is looking for a new challenge to partake in before the end of the year, definitely do that. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Crowley. Welcome back, or welcome to the TrainRight podcast. I'm your host, Adam Pulford. Today we've got an awesome guest that I'm really stoked about, Sarah Crowley. Sarah, can you introduce yourself a little bit more to our audience?
Hi everyone. I guess it's morning. Good morning from me here in
Yeah,
Australia.
good morning.
Yeah. I my name's Sarah Crowley. I'm a professional long course triathlete. I've had multiple wins in Ironman, I guess now, which is pretty amazing. I've spent sort of 15 to 20 years in the sport, but probably people only know my recent stuff, which will cover a little bit more of my history today, hopefully. But yeah, I'm Australian, and really love triathlon. Although I hate to say that. I probably don't tell people that I actually love it, but I do.
Why is that?
I don't know. I guess it's a bit corny. I love my
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Corny's cool though. Corny's cool. I'd own it if I were you.
Yeah.
Well, so everyone, Sarah, as you've kind of heard in my intro, Sarah is an endurance legend, and we'll get more into her history and how she did it. But before we do, Sarah, I was reading your bio online, and I loved it because it starts out as sunshine with a little hurricane. What does that mean?
Well, I always have a bit of trouble describing myself. I mean, there's a lot of athletes, right? So, everyone has to kind of discover your own brand or whatever. And I guess for me, it's being a little bit edgy. And so, yeah, that kind of phrase stuck out to me as kind of just a bit edgy. I think I'm a nice person, but when it comes down to the business, I'll, yeah, give it everything I've got. So there's definitely in Australia we call it mongrel. There's some mongrel there when I race, which I think kind of fits well with that phrase. So yeah, that's where that comes from. I think it sits well with me. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would say so. I mean, it definitely speaks to your racing style for sure. For sure. Well, let's talk about how that all came to be. Let's talk about kind of your origin, and if you want to, let's go back to little Sarah growing up. I mean, what was childhood like? Were you always running and swimming and biking, or
Yeah,
were
I
you
mean,
doing something else?
in Australia, I mean, we don't have very many people here, so
Yeah.
this is how I usually talk about this. I mean, when I was young, maybe less than 20 million people in Australia, so it's a pretty small country, even though our continent's really massive. And
Yeah.
it's sport. Well, I guess if you wind it back even further, I think we hosted an Olympics in the 50s, and we didn't do very well. And then from there, we developed an Institute of Sport, and sport just became everything to everyone. And I think globally, through the 90s, like, basketball was getting huge and everything
Mhm.
else. So sport was just a big thing. But because there wasn't so many people, I guess you played every sport, field teams. So, for me, I guess, I mean, real early days, I probably enjoyed. I was always did running from sort of the start of high school. So that's like 12 years old. I did early morning running group.
Hmm.
And even before that, I did swimming. In Australia, swimming is like a must do. Um, there's programs everywhere, so everyone learns to swim. I didn't learn very good, but I did swim at the time. But it helped me for later, I think. And then I guess, yeah, through school, high school, it was mostly running as my sort of preferred thing. But I did play softball and basketball and pretty much everything. I actually played more American sports. Like in Australia, netball is a big thing, but I just wasn't really that interested. So I played basketball. I think it was just I felt more active. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I was just always on the go. Thanks, mum and
So we're,
dad.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. Exactly. Couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of, so were you competing then? Like, say, running, and what distances was that? And were you competing in swimming?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say this. I've had this discussion with my brother about why I've been able to stay in triathlons so long or sport in general and
Hmm.
keeping refreshed and everything. And I think I was never pressured with my running. So at school we did early morning running. I'd probably run from 12 years old like 30 to 40 kilometers a week. So for a long time I've ran, but
Yeah,
we were never under any pressure. We only did events. There was this it's so funny now to look back, but there were like proper endurance events for kids. Like we would do 100-kilometer relay. So basically,
wow.
once a year, yeah, you train for it. Once a year, you'd team up with four other kids, and you'd run in total 100 kilometers for the day. So I think it was 4 lots of 5 kilometers each. Um, yeah, it was pretty cool. So we'd do that through the Adelaide
Yeah,
loop.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I guess I mean that's a lot for that's a half marathon for sort of
It's a lot for a 12-year-old.
yeah, I know. And at the time, or even now, it's only just occurred to me as we're speaking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe
Yeah,
that's,
develop some endurance back then, I guess.
yeah, and I think mentally it helped. Like, what twelve
Yeah,
year old,
totally.
what 12-year-old runs a half marathon? But I guess, yeah, like I guess. So we did that. And
Sarah Crowley, ladies and gentlemen.
just realizing. So
Yeah. Jeez.
but I think
Yeah,
I mean obviously we also did other events and track and field or whatever. But yeah, for me it wasn't super competitive. It was more just building the engine, I guess, now looking back on it.
yeah,
I always just enjoyed it. I never missed it. Um and so I guess that, does build a big base for later on.
yeah, 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 for sure. And as we know, I mean, as a coach, I would make the argument that most athletes overlook how long it takes to really build a huge base, a proper engine, so to speak. So, being exposed, at a young age to that endurance mindset and also development, I mean, that's a huge arrow in the quiver. So,
Especially under no
uh,
pressure. And by the way, we're
yeah.
talking those 5Ks, we're looking at 24, 25 minutes was like, wow, you ran really well today at
Hmm.
that event. Um,
Hmm.
and then you wind forward to when I kind of just got out of uni and I decided I wanted to run, where I hadn't ran all through uni. I may have done some weights and stuff, but mostly I was
Hmm.
full focus on my studies. And within a year, I'm dropped that down to like 16-minute 5K. So,
So that's
like,
when you
it
got
did
fast.
something. It did something.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so when did you pick up the bike? When did you start riding?
Well, so I hadn't ridden at all, and I pretty much only started, like I said, sort of once I left university. I kinda watched a race down in Adelaide, which I seem to do every year. That's my hometown.
Hmm.
It's at the bottom of Australia. I live, like, near the top right-hand side, of the big
Gotcha,
country.
gotcha.
Um But yeah, like I saw this race and I thought it was pretty cool, so I joined a triathlon club, and I think I'd bought a bike just before that though. So I was doing like a little bit, but yeah, I'm talking maybe 19, 20 years old. I hadn't ridden a bike until then. So it was all very new
Gotcha.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start to get exposed to triathlon and putting all three together?
Oh, geez. So that year, I guess, yeah, I think I must have been in first year my accounting firm, the accounting firm that I worked for. So I'd finished university, I'd started working, and I think
Hmm.
it must be 2003, 2004, something like this. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I guess I just um trained with a group, and I didn't do an actual event until I was like a little bit along, maybe 6 months into it or something, I think.
Gotcha.
Mm.
And were you peer pressured like a lot of us into doing your first try, or was it like this is what I'm gonna do?
Um, well, I was having a lot of fun, so it was just an event, and I just chose to do it, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a really good coach. He was probably like super good with energy systems, and he was very, very. He had coached an Olympian to a gold medal, actually, a weightlifting gold medal back in the 80s.
Oh
But
wow.
he loved try, and he
Hmm.
was just really theoretically brilliant. And so training was always a lot of fun because he had obviously put a lot of thought into the program. So you actually progressed um,
Hmm.
quite quickly because yeah, he'd put thought into everything, and I think that yeah, I guess that encouraged me. And so then yeah, when there's an event, it was like yeah, that was fun. I think, but so much to learn in triathlon. Far out. I don't remember any faux pas or silly things I did in that race, but I'm sure I did. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Those of us who have done triathlon, we probably shouldn't realize how many things we did improperly in the first time, but but you excelled quite quickly from there. Um, tell us how say do your first triathlon into getting invited to I think it was what the national team to
Yeah,
start to compete.
yeah. So I think by 2000, so I was working this whole time. So I'm a chartered accountant. So I worked in corporate finance at Deloitte. And
Hmm.
so I was pushing my career pretty hard because this is like the first few years that you start working. Um, but by 2007, I was so sort of 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Um, I'd I'd gotten the points or whatever to go to the age group world championships. And apart from having a real big mistake in that race, like ridiculously huge, around my transition, which probably would have meant that I'd won the race, um, quite easily. I actually ended up fourth.
What'd you do?
Oh, I ran the whole way to the end of the transition before because I got
Uh,
back before I was so fast that I got back before um our age group was going to be back. So I caught the next age group and they were down the other end of transition. So I don't know what happened, but I thought I had to multi loop the transition. I don't understand what I did, but I messed up. And it was like
yeah.
4 minutes in transition because it was in
Oof.
Hamburg, that long transition down the Alta in Hamburg. Anyway, it
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
mess
yeah.
up. So so anyway,
That's rough.
but
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
got
Okay,
back,
okay.
like, I realized that it didn't matter. The result was the result. I knew that I was at the level. Um, in that field, by the way, was, like, Annie Haag and, like, Camilla Pedersen, I think. It was if you have a look back, it's quite an interesting race. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so, yeah, like, I just knew from there that I was ready to kind of step into try something a bit more professional. One of the other athletes that I'd trained with had moved recently to Queensland at that time. And mostly everyone trains in Queensland because it's that, I guess it would be like Florida maybe, where it's kind of the same, or San Diego. It's kind of like warm all
Hmm.
year round. You can train all the time. Um, and so, yeah, I thought I may as well give it a go. I don't know. I was really enjoying it. And I thought there was a lot more I could achieve, I felt. So, yeah, I kind of trained for about a month with, the as like a test basis up here in Queensland with the Queensland Academy of Sport, and then I decided to move up. So from 2008 onwards, I was full time professional doing short course triathlon. Um,
How old were you then, sir?
so that's an interesting point. So basically, I must have been 24,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and that was like I was just out of under 23, so I didn't have the opportunity. I was a little late coming to it. So I kind of
Yep.
missed that chance to kind of get in the system early. Um,
Hmm.
So I had to work pretty hard then to like achieve what you needed to actually get ranked and everything else. So it was kind of always going to be a 2 to 3 year process.
Yeah, because those girls you mentioned, I mean, they were racing much earlier, right, than you, because you
Yeah,
came a little bit later. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, because for me, the upskilling time took those years of the junior stuff.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I guess that time spent, yeah, pretty much just building up ITU points for at least the first year or so.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you're working I mean, you were working a proper job too. I mean, corporate with Deloitte. I mean, how was as you're kind of you had this goal in mind? How did you balance it all, and when did you make that decision? To be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna give this a proper go.
Yeah, I think I just I'm pretty full gas. Like I try and achieve as much as possible every single day. So it's a problem. Like even now, like I have to learn to stop. So
Real shocking to me. Real shocking.
oh, yeah, I know. Triathletes, right? Um,
Yeah, exactly.
I fit the mold. Um, I don't know. Like I guess initially I was just balancing it by having in Adelaide, I mean, for one thing, in Adelaide, it's not as congested in the city and stuff. So getting around, and it's a really well structured city. So for me, it sort of just worked. Like I was quite efficient at yeah, and my boss is super accepting of it. He loved it. I think he thought that it showed everyone that you can do a lot of things because I won
Mhm.
an award actually for being able to manage all of that. Being able to train every day and still come to work and have these like two sides to me. So I won the National Deloitte Businesswoman of the Year actually in 2006
Wow.
while I was
Did not know that. That's huge.
yeah, it was actually at the time. So
Yeah.
um yeah, that was pretty cool. And then yeah, they were always supportive. So right up until 2016 I was on little leave of absences and things from Deloitte every
Mhm.
time I left to race. So I was always employed by them even though I wasn't in the office. So
That support though is it's super important for that.
yeah,
You
I
know.
mean, I've seen other so being in corporate finance, obviously you see other businesses and other people and how they've tried to manage it and it's not easy. Like also
Mhm.
some of my time when I went post ITU, I went back and trained in clubs and you see other people's struggles with um, training and managing training with family and work and everything else. So for me, I was very lucky, I think, with my workplace and always having people that thought they understood. And I think that comes from the culture in Australia. I mean, sport is huge. Everyone loves it so much. So less so
Yeah.
now though, which is a shame. But yeah, it's always very well supported, which was good for me.
Yeah. 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 So that support allowed you the time, and you go back to like 2008 through 10. I mean, you had
Mm.
a lot of success in shorter course ITU draft legal racing.
Yeah, I think like looking back on it now, I wish I could have achieved so much more. Like obviously now that we'll get to it, but I can swim. But then I guess I was constantly progressing until a point where it was just clearly obvious that it was gonna take an effort to change the swim. We couldn't just get fitter anymore, and that would make up for it.
Hmm.
So I guess
Yeah.
it was a decision point. I had Deloitte going, "Oh, do you want to come back to work soon in Brisbane?" And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah." And I had a couple with the small injury at the time. You're like, um, yeah, that's kind of
So it was like you had to push more chips in. You had an injury, and right around 2010, that's when you went back to kind of more full time work.
yeah. Like we got up to the World Series, and then I was just getting like, I wasn't getting lapped out. Actually, you can say I never was lapped out of a race, which I'm proud
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. For sure.
I
That's
don't think
saying
I'd let
something.
it happen. I'd just fight on. I was like, "No, you're not giving me any force." But it was never, it just weren't quite there. If something went wrong, it went really wrong for me. So because I just didn't have any, um, there's just no leniency for me in a race. Everything was tight because of that swim. So yeah, it was real challenging, but I got to the point where I felt like perhaps I couldn't go any further unless we made a big investment in swimming, and I didn't know how to
Hmm.
do that at the time. Oddly enough, and Cameron, my coach, Cameron Watt, would
Yeah.
tell me this because I was friends with him then. He's like, "I know a guy that could fix this," and that being that was probably Brett Sutton at the time. And I just always wonder what would have happened had I responded to his Facebook message with, "Oh, yeah,
Interesting.
actually, I'll do that." But I think I'd already had it in my head that I wanted to return to work. And in the
Yeah.
end, I think it's extended my career. Like, that's like COVID, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
people need to take
Yeah.
these opportunities to like let their head just go do something else for a bit, and not
For
be
sure.
so focused on triathlon.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that for a quick minute. I mean, you took that time. You were still, I assume, you're still training and maybe towed the line of something from 2010 to 12. But what was that time like for you? Was it just like a good hard reset, or what were you doing then?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was feeling a little lost. I didn't know, like, I needed to go back to work. I felt like I wanted to push my career a little bit. And I don't even know why. Probably because I'd spent all this time educating myself in it, and and I actually enjoyed my job. So I
Yeah.
was curious. The mining boom was going big here. Like, there was interesting work on. Um, Yeah, so I kind of, and I enjoyed the people. I really liked the people in my firm. So I guess, yeah, went back to work. I kind of, yeah, I was a bit lost. I tried a bit of just pure running for a little bit. And yeah, I took up cycling because the firm actually had a cycling team. Um,
Hmm.
and we had quite a really good girl in it, actually. Her name's Grace Salzberger. Her brother raced Tour de France. In fact, now he runs Zwift in Australia. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
crazy.
in Australia, everybody, by the way, knows everybody. So, because there's only 20 million of us. Um,
Only 20.
but but yeah, so I ended up helping in the team, like helping her, and that sort of, I guess, ramped my riding up a little bit. From that, I did
Hmm.
actually become a lot stronger. I didn't realize with my cycling that, even now I'm grateful for it. I never feel like I'm doing a cycling block. Either it's because I really enjoy cycling, or that I think naturally I just pick it up and build muscle really quite quickly. So, um, yeah, cycling for me has always been just well, I'm quite lucky, but it always just comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can honestly tell you, I feel like I mean, there's been times we've done a lot of cycling and it's been, wow, riding again, but it's never like, oh, I need to address my cycling. Yeah, we're going to spend
Yeah, that's fortunate because I've had some athletes that great swimmers and actually good runners as well, but like they just it's like pulling teeth to get them to do the long ride or whatever. So I mean, yeah, you're lucky in that regard too.
Yeah, I think just and then whatever we do seems to work. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm quite lucky. So I guess during that time, I was like, well, maybe this will be interesting to try a long course at some point. And I also almost immediately joined a triathlon club because I knew I enjoyed the training, and I chose one that had, this is probably a little tidbit for people, but one that had like a good track session, a lot of swimming session options, and a good social slash still want to perform type culture. So I took a bit of
Hmm.
time picking that, but yeah, we got this big club here called Red Dog Triathlon Training. They're so cool. And so I pretty much joined that club almost as soon as I went back to work, just because, yeah, just enjoy having that, I guess, routine and structure to my day, and having
And the camaraderie.
exercise. You always have exercise as part of your life. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I kind
Yeah,
of just did that. It was more social for me. It was a reset.
that's good. Yeah. So 2012, what made you decide to come back?
um, Pressure. That was peer pressure actually from the red zone.
Okay, now
From
the
the
peer
training.
pressure comes in.
Yeah,
That means you were with a good group for sure.
yeah, that was from the training squad. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and then it was like I think I did a half in the end of 11. I did a half at Port Macquarie, and I did it like ITU style in like togs, and I ran like 37 minutes for the first 10Ks and like 55 minutes for the second 10Ks. And it was like fourth, and no one was the wiser that I even did the race. And I realized I just needed to kind of like focus a bit more on the different it's a different energy system is what I
Yeah,
realized. So
yeah.
I then buckled down. I did a local Gundawindi Hell of the West up here, and I won that race. And then 6 months later I won Ironman 70.3 cans as a professional.
Hmm.
And so I
That's a
guess,
big result for you for sure.
yeah, it was at the time. Like, I couldn't believe it. But then I got a bit of an itch for it, but I couldn't devote the amount of time required. So I spent sort of 4 years
Hmm.
just, oh, it was so funny. So I'm like going into my boss's office, going, "Can I have an extra day off either side of the weekend?" Which doesn't flow that well in corporate finance because you're on projects.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's like,
can imagine.
I'm going to South Korea. And I'd flew into a race, like I'd actually fly into a race on a Friday. I'd be on some bus driving through Korea or somewhere like this. And I'd get to the race venue on like Saturday afternoon, rack my bike, register, and then race the next day, and then fly back. And so I was there for like less than 24 hours. So this was happening quite a bit. Um,
Work-life balance, Sarah. You probably didn't have it.
just burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I did that for quite some time because at that time as well, you're picturing like big jobs, big mining industry boom, all this stuff going on. It was like pretty
Hmm.
crazy. Um, and then it got to a point though where I was just kind of this is towards the back end of 15. I think I
Hmm.
won like the Australian Duathlon Championship, and then I won maybe a half, but I also then got like really crappy results in full Ironman. I tried my first full in 15. Um,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say crappy. That's not fair. But for me, it wasn't at the level I could have performed at, even with the
Yeah.
amount of time I could devote to it. And then I guess I also wasn't focusing on it. You notice I was talking about halves and fulls and duathlons. I wasn't focusing on anything in particular with my racing. I was just all over
Hmm.
the place and doing marathons and all sorts of stuff. So I felt like I just needed some higher level guidance if I was going to try and do it properly. Otherwise, it would be a lot of fourths and wow, what an interesting story. This chick works full time. But I'm like, well, I can actually give this a lot more. I know that if I could actually improve my swim and give it one last go, then I've still got this epic run and this epic ride that could lift me to another level. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, enter Cameron
So
Watt.
yeah, I was gonna say because like if you followed your racing, it seemed like 2016, a lot of things started to change, and is that when you started working with Cameron?
Yeah, so at the end of 15, I had a
Okay.
meeting with him, and
Hmm.
um, I started working to get like I said to him, I don't care what it takes for this swim. Um, like it's now or never. I'm happy to just go with whatever you think, and I'll give it everything I've got, and just be straightforward with me and honest and direct, and we'll see how far we can go. And so, um, it's funny, we do often nostalgically talk about some of the things we spoke at that meeting. It's like, am I too old? All these things. It was funny. So yeah, we pretty much well, I was still working for the first part of that year, I think for half of it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I guess this talks to your idea of life stress, but I mean, trying to balance a sort of a trisato training methodology with working full time. I think Cam did that really well at the time. um,
Yeah.
but I
For those listeners, before the interview, we were talking about TSS training stress. score versus LSS, or life stress score, and we can't really measure LSS as much, but we know it's there, especially when you're burning not only the candle at both ends, but the candle factory like Sarah was doing this whole time. So,
Yeah.
but Cameron helped to mitigate that, help you get focused, and like completely change your training, right?
Yeah, I mean, we went through everything from like my outside influences to how does my workday look and how can we manage it. And so we just went on a really straightforward training program for a few months there where it was just getting done what I could do. And also my workplace, I'd told them that I was going to leave at some point. And so, I had a bit more, I guess, I had a firm leaving time for the day. I think I had Wednesdays work from home, so we'd managed it pretty well. But yeah, the main thing I guess from him, so he'd just returned from like being a director of a cycling team. He'd spent his time since I'd spoken to him last, which was you should go to this guy, he'll fix your swimming. Um, um, I mean, he was always there. It's funny, you look back, like he helped me get my pro license with Ironman. Yeah, I think just hovering over there. And I saw
Mhm.
him coach a couple of people on the side do really well that I would never have expected their results to be so good. So I was like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. And, I was tossing up between a few different coaches at the time, but it just worked out that he wanted an on deck squad in Brisbane right near me. So that I'm like, well, this
Mhm.
works super well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
and then when I got down to more of it, the history there with Brett and some of the athletes that Chrissy Wellington, like Cameron's trained with Chrissy, he's trained, he's seen a lot of um, both short and long course athletes and some of the best in the sport. So yeah, it became a pretty easy decision actually after a little bit, and then I guess um, we started the swim in about April, I think, in 16. And oh man, it was so bad. Like because I was your typical.
What was bad?
Well, I was a big kicker, and I was your typical bent arms person with like
Yeah.
low rating at the front, and then we changed it to like an egg beater where it's like zero kicking and crazy
Mhm.
arms at the front, and so and there were straight arms, and so the first time I swam, I think I went from like, I mean, I could probably make a 130 cycle then, but I went to like,
Yeah.
couldn't even make 140 with paddles and gear on and everything. Just like was such a re engineer of my stroke. But then
Yeah.
within about a month, we raced in New Caledonia that year. And I think I got third maybe, but my swim time was about the same. So I was like, even though it feels terrible and I don't feel good at it, I've stuck to it. I made a blanket decision that it was a new stroke. It's not I'm adapting my freestyle. This is a whole new stroke to me because it was so
Yeah.
different and we changed
It's a
everything.
new language. Yeah.
Yeah, and we changed everything at once. So it was actually easier to learn it by calling it that, a new
Mm.
stroke, like straight arms. I just called it that because in my
Yeah.
head, um, it was just learning something new. And so when the swim result from that race was not dissimilar to what it had been the like previous times I'd raced it, I was like, well, we're not going worse, um,
It's true. Yep.
even
Yep.
within a month. And so, oh gosh, it took time. So by I guess we didn't really see that much gain in it. And then I had a big camp with Brett actually in Jeju before Kona. Somehow I managed to qualify for Kona in 16. I think I was third at Cairns. So things were improving. I started winning stuff. Um,
Mhm.
probably Yeah, I guess we did a big camp in Jeju before Kona, and I got Brett and Cam on me at the same time looking at it, and we made there. I learned some new things that helped with the stroke, and then yeah, I kind of broke out. I guess at Bahrain at the end of the year because we came back from Kona and did a big swim block.
Gotcha.
Mm.
So while you were learning this new patterning of a swim, how how did you change, or did you change at all, the bike and run components
Oh,
during your training blocks?
that's a good question. Oh gosh, I'm thinking back now. I don't think.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but
Yeah, 4 years ago. Um,
yeah.
Well, I feel like initially we didn't change anything with that. Like we pretty much
Mhm.
I just kind of did the similar swim. I mean, we didn't swim the volume that we swim now, but then I wasn't ready for the volume. So now we
Yeah.
swim 6, sometimes 7K swim sets. Most days it's at least 5.5. Back then it was kind of like 4.
Mhm.
And we did all the things then that I would be doing now, probably not as compressed. So, I guess it matches where I was at in my development, not just swimming. So,
Mhm.
um, it's interesting you say that. I look now at other athletes that come into the squad. Now, I don't at all resent it, but they learn a lot quickly compared to me, because we've been through what we went through, and people progress to different levels like a lot quicker than I feel like I did. So that's an interesting thing,
Yeah.
hey. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but like I see people go and they're getting to say the volumes and the I guess the technique stuff that we didn't put into my stroke. They're getting that real early and they're actually improving a lot quicker than I did. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I'm the one that's gone and I've achieved quite a lot from it, but it's fascinating to see that. I guess that's a
Yeah.
testament to Cam as a coach being able to pick what was working and then give that to others. So
Yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, just as a coach, I mean, I would probably rather take somebody who's a hard worker and maybe a slow developer rather than the fast developer, because oftentimes what I see with the fast developers, they put the time in, then they start getting results. It's like, see, I got this. Like, I don't need to do more necessarily, as opposed to say you get challenged and you get the feedback of, man, this is really freaking hard. So you're going to work harder, but yet you've got a good coach to kind of motivate you, dial you back when you need to, kick you in the butt when you need to. And I think it speaks to a little bit of your longevity as well in the sport.
yeah, I think so. I mean, that's it's sort of I came back into it because I was really wanted to see where I could get to, and when that itch dries up, that's when it goes. So I think, yeah, you're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
Like keeping that progression, just keep chipping away at it all the time, I think will keep me there. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I've even
Yeah.
just recently, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but just recently with Sunshine Coast on the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in by far. I mean, I got 15% gain in just getting a bit fitter and leaner. I'm not fit at all. It's I've kind of enjoyed COVID, but honestly, like I can see so much gain, and I don't know what we've done differently. Like the whole race went well, everything went to plan, and you walk away going, "Wow, well, we can even make more gains still," um,
Yeah.
and that's what will keep me racing. So I guess that's probably a good observation, definitely for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's go back to like the
yeah,
swim development, because it took some time. And clearly, from a strengths and weaknesses, you've always been a strong runner.
mm,
The swim historically was not as strong. You guys identified that clearly in like race results, right? And then you developed the swim, and now you're a hell of a swimmer, which is awesome. But I would say if you can think about how you and Cameron work, and I'd say bigger picture, what are your strengths and weaknesses as an athlete? And how do you incorporate that into your training program now versus back then? Meaning, are you more gritty? Are you more resilient? Or, do you gain fitness really quickly, like you kind of just talked about? Like, what are the strengths and weaknesses just as a athlete
exactly.
in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think I recover really well. Like that's probably I can back to back. You'll see that in my career with racing. Like, Cairns, Frankfurt, Kona,
Hmm.
Argentina, Kona, Arizona. Like I back up really well. I recover super well from stuff. So I guess I mean that can be a weakness as well because then you can kind of like keep going. Um,
Yeah, true.
yeah. So and then I often also it's a weakness almost day to day with training too because I have obviously this engine for running. I can push the run quite a bit in training because I know I'll back up. And
Hmm.
mentally I can do it too. So he has to constantly monitor me being like too full gas. And that's
Hmm.
I mean, it's not intentional. I just sometimes I get in a mood and I just shut everything out, and
Yeah.
train, like, super hard. Um, I think Cam says, I always have this amazing ability to, like, compartmentalize stuff and just, turn a bad situation into something that I can overcome, and that even happens in racing. So, for example, crashing in 17 Kona and then getting up and, um, just still getting third. Like, I do it on a daily basis. I just overcome stuff. I don't I don't dwell or get drawn into, poor me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So quite, I guess, hard in that regard. I guess it comes from just always wanting to work hard for, always feeling probably like it's probably come from the swim being bad and having to always overcome stuff for the rest of the race constantly. And to me, those things
For sure.
they're not difficult now because nothing is hard as overcoming that swim gap. Um, yeah, so I guess they're probably the main things. I think I do overdo everything in my life though. Like, I just always on the go. So I love that about it's enjoyable. I get up every day. I'm excited. It's good. Um, but yeah, I probably could peg that back a bit. That's a weakness. Is just not finding
Yeah.
it relaxing.
Yeah, and as I sit here and listen to you as well, I think the recovery and the resiliency coincides with the running aspect and how you developed real young, right? You put the
Yeah,
miles in early for a long time, and for somebody who hadn't done that, whether it's a full distance or a hard training session or whatever on the track, they're not going to bounce back as quickly. So with you having those miles, it allows you to do that, say in the training, but you're still human too. It's running training still going to beat you up. So
yeah, you can take it for granted. That's
yeah,
probably, it's like, well, oh, I guess if I want to do these 5 things today, I can do it and take it for granted,
yeah,
but it's not that it's gonna impact my performance on a normal level. Like, I think that's where the
yeah,
difference is. It's like, I'm very grateful for this, and it's a gift. It's that I can do those 5 things and still race and, for example, be second at Sunny Coast. But if I wanna be world class and extremely good, then I can't do those 5 things. I just have to focus on this one thing and do it right. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and that
There's a quote out there. There's a quote out there that says like we often overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. It's like that.
Yeah, exactly like that. Exactly like
Yeah,
that. Yeah. So you constantly got to be monitoring, well, how is this going to impact me later down the track? Um,
exactly.
because I can do it and do it really well right now, and everything will be fine. No one will be the wiser, but yeah, it chips away at something. Mm.
So that's your strength as a kind of global athlete. What's the weakness then? Is it that go go go, or is there something
Um,
else?
yeah, I think it probably is. It's just overthinking stuff a bit too much and getting too detailed on. Um, I think, yeah, I can get ahead of myself, like trying to constantly plan everything out. And, um, the times I've run into drama with injury and stuff, it's usually around that where I've been too intense. I can now see it in other athletes. It's interesting. I've picked a few injuries of people when I'm like, I just feel like from the social media and the language that it reminds me of when I get in this, like, too serious, too focused, too, because there's focus, but it has to be like a soft focus on a, rather than a, um like an aggressive focus, like, and so, and
Hmm.
I can get in that mindset, and I think that's fine in the training session, but not in your language and the way you conduct yourself all the time during the day. So, you can kind of pick that up in social media when people go into this zone of, um, yeah, like almost aggressive race preparation. That they're on a little bit of a tightrope with, um, not being relaxed enough, I think, to properly recover and stuff. And so I can kind of get in that mindset myself, I think. Yeah. Like, I can definitely
Hmm.
switch on focus at training, but it can't be like aggressive focus. It has to be focus on achieving, the session, applying myself to the session as opposed to winning the session. Yeah, it's a difference. Mm.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I was just about to say, so like the advice for like the listener, the type A young aspiring triathlete, or the CEO that wants to crush all of 2021, what would you tell them if they're just hyper focused right now and they want to like chomping at the bit for racing? What would you tell them?
Well, I think it's important to still, yeah, just apply yourself to the session. If that means that it's easy, it's easy. I mean, I guess we have this conversation with people all the time, but like it easy doesn't mean, oh well, I'm going to go just a little harder than easy so that I dominate everyone in the pool or whatever. It just means just take it easy. And
Yeah.
it's okay to smile and be happy and train, and you can still apply yourself to training and enjoy it and be happy and nice and kind. And I think that might going in and training like that, where you're happy and you're smiling and things are, you can kind of water off a duck's back. Everything's, you don't sort of dwell on anything. You don't care about other people's whatever they're doing. Um, eh, you can still train really well, and compared to going in and being aggressive and training, um, and then you can be nice around training, but then you get in and you're like quite aggressive in the pool or track or whatever. Um, that can get you down a bit of a spiral of overtraining and stuff. So I think sort of trying to stay relaxed is, it's really important. It's a hard thing to identify. I think it's not easy.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it takes years to develop that. I mean, and you've done that in your sport, so you can speak to it now. Probably didn't back in 2008, but I think that flow of sense and that balance that you've been able to reach, I think it's showcased in 2017, where you started just winning, right? I mean, ITU long course world champion, Ironman European champion, third at Kona, and I think once an athlete starts to get a taste of winning, it's like a drug. It's like an addiction. Tell us more about what that experience was like.
Yeah, well, I think you become. I mean, my breakout was probably Cairns Ironman at Asia Pacific Championship. That was in June,
Mhm.
and I was pretty quiet around the race. Like I didn't really. I knew I was in super fit form, like ridiculously fit. We'd spent 6 months of just more training, 6 months out of the office completely, fully, probably maybe 8 or 9 months, where, or maybe more by then, but a long time preparing. I knew I dug myself into a pretty deep hole with training and um, racing the year before to get more experience, um, traveling, and Cameron was throwing everything at me that year, like, traveling and, in a sense that we're trying to make it throw as many kind of facets into what a professional, he wanted me to be fully self-sufficient, um, and be able,
That's a good coach, by the way. That's a good coach.
yeah, like anytime, anywhere. So I think at the start of
Hmm.
the year we might have raced. We did Bahrain, then we raced Dubai, and it was like back to the Middle East, back to Australia, you know, down to Geelong, down over to Gundawindi, hell of the West. Like we were going everywhere. Um, Races, weeks, a week, 4 times we raced 1 week apart that year. Um, and it was all just, I guess, building my capability of dealing with anything. So in my mind at that Cairns race, I knew that I could cope with any scenario, but I didn't know that I could win an Ironman regional championship, nor did I know I could go under 9 hours. Um, yeah, so I guess I was in front most of the day, so it wasn't really like I had to make any strategic racing decisions in that race. Um, and I didn't know I was doing Frankfurt either. I think we signed up that day to do Frankfurt 4 weeks later.
What?
But that comes down to me being able to back up, I think, with training. And we'd done so much work that it was all in the legs anyway. So, yeah, look, I think then I started to get more strategic and I learned how to. I mean, I think I benefit a lot from ITU. Like, I can see stuff happening. Um, I think it's a strength that I do have in racing is that I can see kind of the probability of different things playing out and my best chance of getting my best result in that race based off decisions at the time. Um,
Yeah.
make those choices real quick. Um, for example, on the weekend, there was a scenario in Sunshine Coast where I was obviously off the back and there was a pack ahead of me. I'd rode really hard for the first lap. One girl came from behind. She'd ridden up on my pack, on me, I guess. And I just was catching Ashley Gentle. Um, so I saw Ash. I eased up, took a rest, saw this girl coming, past Ash because we were going through some hilly section, and I knew the elves would be coming by, and then through the hills we dropped Ash, and I knew that was my only chance to get rid of Ashley Gentle was at that point. I guess that strategy thinking comes from ITU and work
100%.
and everything else that I've, but being, yeah, I guess quite aware. And I think you get that awareness because you just want to win. You believe you can win. And so you're more engaged in the event as opposed to time trialing. Um, like, for example,
Yeah.
had I missed that moment, I would have been running with Ashley Gentle. And at the moment, with my current level of fitness, I don't know if that's something that I could have dealt with. Um, so yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think I learnt that, and it's hard to explain what that is.
Well, I say let's talk about it because I think it's a huge thing in an athlete's development, and it is a hard thing to define or even talk about because I was, as you were describing it, I was just about to say a coach can't give that to an athlete. A coach can develop an athlete physiologically and even psychologically to get him in the right situation, but the athlete then hopefully has developed some awareness as well of thyself, of the race, in order to actually then like flow in the competition, right?
Hmm.
And that's where it starts to get super fun,
Yeah.
because if say it was 2008, you don't have the swim and you're in a highly competitive field. Well, you're probably so worried about bridging the gap the entire time, and like you said, time trialing, that your strength really couldn't be a strength at that point, right?
Yeah,
And so the lack, like you didn't have the awareness.
exactly. You can't. You just had to get you the whole time is a negative thought process too of, oh gosh, I got to catch up. I got to catch up. Like, it's nothing to do with the race going around you.
Yeah.
Um,
So you shore up the weakness to where it's at least not a weakness, but maybe not a strength, but like now you're in the game to play the game,
yeah,
and then you make the reads based on pacing or put the nail in the coffin or whatever the case is to actually win. And for me, when I see an athlete there with that awareness playing the game, that's fun. That's really fun.
yeah. I mean, and that's what happened in the ITU worlds. Like,
Hmm.
I was like an opportunity. I was like actually licking my lips in that because I pretty much caught up. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't need to ride on the front. We're at the front of the race, and then I just have to run really fast. It's like, is that all I have to do today? Is like, but like that's where you ultimately need to get to. Some people never get that. Like, they can be
No.
trained and they're smart people, but they don't think, and you have to think. Some races, if you're capable, will fall into your hands, like Cairns, I would say. I was just fitter and stronger.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been some races and some scenarios, lots of them, where it's been, if I hadn't made certain choices, then there's no way I would have won that race. Um, and so those smarts are developed off of years and years of experience. Um,
Yeah, that's it.
I don't think I've ever talked about this with anyone. It's a good topic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're talking about
Yeah.
it here. um, well, that mentality, I think, it's been said that, winning winning is a habit. Like I said, you taste it, you want more of it, and you want to do it differently. And I think that's what we saw kind of in 2019 was out of you. Is you started to race kind of in different ways, and the success continued even into the tail end of 19. But if we can talk about 2020, it's kind of been a hot mess for the world.
Yeah. So,
How have you how have you adapted?
well,
You're coming. You got this huge streak going. COVID-19 happens. Tell us about Sarah.
yeah, well, it's funny because after Hawaii, Cam and I sat and chatted about how with the PTO and everything happening, we need to be flexible for 20. And so I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, I remember down the pool and the condos that I stayed in Hawaii the next day after the race. I'm swimming like a 4K set, and I'm like, Cam, we're racing again in 3 weeks. I have to say yes to Noosa like today. We're doing it." And he's like, "Okay." So I did the Noosa try. And then I was like, after that, I had to make the choice on Arizona. I'm like, we're doing it. We're going to Arizona. And um, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I knew I'd be pushing adrenal fatigue by then, but we're fine.
You back up well though, so we're good.
Yeah, except after that race, I was like the Michelin man. I'm like, okay, the year is definitely over. I'm
Oof.
gonna get sick if I
Yeah,
do one more training session. But
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I did Arizona with the intention of opening up 2020 to doing whatever I needed to do. And so for me, it actually panned out in a really good way. Like I've qualified for Hawaii. So when all this COVID dropped, for me, I'm like, well, I'm pretty flexible right now. I've qualified for everything already.
Hmm.
Um, I've had 4 full gas years of training. I just needed that time, like I've said in the past, where I've gone back to work for a bit or I've done something different. And so, yeah, I guess this year I've kind of built a little business of my own, like with, yeah, a friend of mine. We're doing like, I guess sort of media and marketing stuff. So we've built that up. I've just tried to.
Is that the YouTube channel?
Oh, I don't have a YouTube. Well, I don't use it that much. It's mostly on my Instagram and TV. But yeah,
Oh,
like,
okay,
we're
okay.
gonna try and like support other athletes with brand marketing and stuff.
That's yeah, yeah,
It-
yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's been fun. So, um, yeah, so Dale and I have been doing that, and I guess I've I've just focused. I just sort of changed. I stepped away my mindset from that. I guess every day being about getting better or whatever to just chilling and enjoying training. One thing I did notice for me though, I'm like completely just almost humoring the training squad with my training and being at like a level and just training at that level all year. And then something clicked, these races were committed, and then it's like, boom, I'm back into this, uh, I guess, more focused training mindset. So I'm very
Mhm.
pleased with myself that I was actually able to do that. It probably looked like I was just swanning around for 4 or 5 months, but I actually kind of was like and it was an intention that I think Cam got annoyed, but I didn't want to have. For me, I can't be the focused person when there was no need for it in my mind. And I know
Yeah.
I probably gave up some gains or something during that time, but for me psychologically I've had a rest. And then we go to Sunny Coast on the weekend and I had an absolute ball, and I realized why I love triathlon. So for everyone out there that hasn't had the chance to race, if you've been able to just like chill back on training, and then once a race is committed, focus on it, and then you get to race, it's the most unbelievable feeling. And you realize you're racing for you and that you love it. Because in Queensland, with COVID safe rules on the weekend, there was no finish line celebration or anything. It's kind of strange, but the self gratification and achievement of actually just completing a race, and the mindset of all the other athletes as well. Like, I mean, this will obviously change as things turn to normal, but everyone was just more focused on themselves. Like I just got beaten by Amelia. She had a great race. I didn't get angry at myself or her or any other athlete for the performance. And so I think because sometimes you can get caught up in, oh, that athlete did this and that, and you just don't. It wasn't like that at all. It was like everyone's been through like a pretty rough year, um, and everyone was just having a great time racing, and the result was the result. But yeah, I think for me that time spent just not really caring too much about it, but still training for the first half of the year is going to pay dividends by the end of perhaps next year, or even the year after, or even another year after that, that maybe I wouldn't have raced. Like, I don't know how long you know, it's a pretty intense sport, right? Like, your body only has a certain amount of
Yeah,
yards in
for
it. And
sure.
so I think, it could have, I feel like it's extended my career. So I kind of went into it with that mindset, but then I was in a unique position of 4 years of epic training, and having that, oh, we do actually need to step back a bit, or you won't last much longer. Um, so I think for me, I just really embraced that chance to kind of just, and also I went places. So, I guess we went up to Noosa so that I could swim still because the pool shut, and I got to enjoy training up at Noosa for a couple of months and things like that. So I think for me it was
That's
like,
not bad.
yeah, it was good. And then just, yeah, that intensity started to build as I came back to Brisbane. We squad started, and then the focus, I layered in the focus. Um, so I'm excited by amount of gains that I can make now, in the next 6 months or so, I think.
Yeah, I think you're yet to see what the past 4 or 5 months of just really unplugging is going to do
Mm.
for your career for sure. I mean, it's just from the sounds of it, because when you're at the level that you are, or you've pushed your body, beyond to Michelin man status,
Yeah.
that's a really big overreach, overtrain, whatever you want to call it, and they're not advocating that listeners do this, but when you see athletes that can push to that level as a coach, you want to dial that back, seize the opportunity of rest and recovery or whatever, because that super compensation time period that can last a long time, or even the psychological adaptation that can occur with a nice big break, it's huge. It's huge. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with you in your racing.
Yeah, I was
Um,
shocked. Like, I honestly hadn't ran. I don't think I'd done a run over like 20 something kilometers. And then on the weekend, I was just in so much control, and you could feel all the Ks. I'm like, this is 4 or 5 years of kilometers in these legs right now. Like,
right, right.
I'm like, I'm not taking it for granted because we're training. Like, we're not training. But it was like, wow, you know, all that hard work and it's in such a relaxed way. Like, I was so relaxed. It was, yeah, it's good. So I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to things. I mean, hopefully everything keeps going back to normal slowly. It's, who
Yeah,
knows?
fingers
Mm.
crossed. Knock on wood. Excuse me. And I think they will. But in the meantime, if we don't have, if we can't go to Queensland and do some socially distant races and whatnot, I know that there is the DIY try going on, and one of your sponsors is putting that on. Can you tell us more about what that may be?
Yeah, so Canyon's pulling together a little training block that you can get engaged with. And there'll be some, I guess, some online um, tutorial type stuff as well, and some training and things leading into what I believe to be a little event on the same day that Kona will have been on. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
so I think it's kind of cool. I mean, like, if you don't have an event, it kind of gets you back on a normal schedule with racing. Maybe it's time to start dusting things off. I know a lot of people have still been training, but it's hard to say. I think people probably went pretty hard early on the indoor trainer stuff, and then maybe they're losing a bit of mojo now. So it's probably a good idea, and it's another opportunity to kind of start building into something that may tie then into the recommencement of a normal training schedule and season. So hopefully we're going to look at Hawaii for next year at the same time. So it kind of could kick you
Yeah.
off with have a little race, then have a little rest, and then start training back in for next year. So it's just another opportunity to kind of get involved. I think Canyon's got some giveaways, maybe. I'm not sure, Adam, with what you've heard in that regard. That's something people
Well,
should do it maybe. And
we might have a special guest appearing at the tail end of this episode, i.e., JB, to tell us more. But I wanted to at least mention it, and we'll get perhaps more details later.
yeah,
Um, But we're coming up to the top of the hour, and Sarah, first of all, just thank you for spending so much time chatting with us and helping us learn more about you and how to train better. But I have a few questions for you
Okay.
to little takeaways for our listeners that they can just apply right away to their training,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap up and carry on with our day. So, first question is for, and we touched on this a little bit already, but for our listeners missing competition right now, but it's just not there. What can you tell them to stay focused, even though they can't scratch that itch?
Yeah, I think my main philosophy this year has been, now this, I guess it may not keep you focused, but it is to actually just enjoy the training for what it is. Don't stress. Do little mini like do things that you wouldn't normally have the chance to do, and allow yourself to do them. So I've been on little trips in Queensland, like little drives, and we've done training in a different place. So Stradbroke Island, Harvey Bay, whatnot, Noosa. And normally that stuff is off the cards because you just don't even have time for the travel, the whatever life. And so I think give yourself the chance to enjoy what you love, because you so many times in my life I've thought triathlon's an amazing thing to do, but you're actually not enjoying it in the moment a lot of the time, and you think, oh, I could have done this race, I did this race, I could have done this touristy thing, or I could have done this, but I didn't because I did a triathlon. And theoretically it looks glamorous that you could do all these cool things to do with the sport, and I think it's the time now is to actually enjoy that. um, a race will come up, and just make sure your training's kind of at the level where press the button 12 weeks and you can compete, and don't get too hooked up on needing to be in world class, your best lifetime fitness for that first race, because there's still a long road between what's coming up in the next few months and where we need to be in the later part of next year when the world championship events start kicking off. So yeah, I think that's my advice. That's how I've approached it. Anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a really good answer. Really good answer. All right, question two. If someone wants to improve their swim leg like you have, but they have no clue where to start, what would you tell
Ooh. Well, I think I was lucky that I sought a coach out. Okay, so sorry to their current coaches out there, but if it's something that means a lot
them?
to you, so if it means a lot to you, um, or you've first of all exhausted getting fitter at swimming. So a lot of the time people don't swim enough in try. So exhaust that option first. Just get in the pool more and make it easier for yourself to enjoy swimming. So pool boy paddles or whatever. I'm not a coach, but the more freestyle you can do, the more swimming you do, so the better you get, and the fitter at swimming you get. If you've exhausted that and then you don't know what to do next, it's you need to make a conscious decision to seek out someone that's, um, I guess, improved, has a history of improving swimming, or and that's often the hardest thing, is that you actually probably do need then have it looked at, like you, and then be open, very open minded, um, with the changes if you trust that person. Because for me, mine, you will probably go backwards, and I definitely did, but um, in the long run, it's paid off. Um, it's not an easy thing to fix swimming. It's hard. It's easy for me to sit here having done it to say just do this, but it's not an actual easy thing, because for me, one of Cameron's strengths as a coach is to not apply a cookie cutter swimming approach. Like, we're not all Michael Phelps. Everyone's got different body shape, different flexibility, different range of motion, and so different technique things have to be applied to the individual. And so if you can at least find someone that perhaps thinks like that, where they're going to give you something that's specific to you and how you move in the water, and that will make you better, then maybe look for someone like this. But yeah, it's a big call. And like I said, it's easy for me to sit here having improved my swim and made a probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Um, but I didn't have hindsight at that point. So yeah,
Yeah.
the
Well,
risk.
2 steps back for 6 steps forward, basically for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right. Third question: what is the number one thing you love about your sport?
Oh, the people, I think. I love it how in
That's a good answer.
yeah, like it's cool. It's people are more than helpful, and there's a good like there's a tight core kind of community of people that they'll do anything for you. Um I really noticed that this year with Guess No Racing and stuff. I've kind of spent this year kind of reconnecting as much as possible with as many people as possible, and people don't hold grudges in the sport at all. Like everyone's just always happy. And I think it's just a mindset because you do so much training that's so hard that I think people can't afford to spend the time hating on people for life. Like it's amazing, because there's some pretty funny stories in triathlon, right? Like
Yeah,
I guess
for
it's the
sure.
same in any sport, but no one's held grudges over people. So I think the people in the sport make it. You know, from people like, you know, I guess your Bob Babbitts and Mike Rileys and that have all the history and the nostalgia of try to, some of your high level coaches and, just the people like Belinda Granger and all that plug it all together. It's a just though that's what makes the sport really cool for me as a professional because I have just a great time around every event and those are the people make that, I think. Um I just love that about it. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I'd be compelled if I didn't ask a curiosity question. So, call a question for where do we see Sarah Crowley in 5 years?
I don't know. I'm focused at the moment on getting back to my level of fitness so that I can race Ironman Cairns in like less than 2 weeks. And then
That's probably the best answer during a pandemic
yeah,
and everything else that we have going on.
because on the
But I figured I'd throw it out there with this newfound vision after the COVID break and all this kind of stuff.
well, I mean,
Fig-
tomorrow they'll confirm if it's still going ahead. So it's like
It's
we're
true.
talking weeks
That's
here.
true.
Um, but I'll be heading over to America actually after it. I've got a travel exemption to be able to compete at the Challenge Daytona, which I'm very excited about. Evidently
That's pretty cool.
that's super cool. And I think, like, I mean, the main thing for the meantime and the short term is it's great to see the PTO like supporting a lot of little races around the world to keep us in the job. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, I've pivoted a little bit to do some marketing around brands, and how I see it is as long as there's people in the world that want to exercise, there's going to be products that people need to use, like bikes, for example, and then from that I can with this little business I'm going to sort of get going. It's like we can market that stuff. So there's always a need for that. So in the long run, that's kind of like the long play. But that's second,
Gotcha.
definitely second fiddle to the racing. Um, in the next, well, the foreseeable future, anyway.
Cool. Very cool. Well, for our listeners who think that you're very cool and they want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Oh, on the Grammygram mostly.
The Grammygram.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty flash. I've got a pretty flash Instagram these days. Um,
Cool. Well, we'll put that in
yeah,
our
put that
show
up.
notes for sure, as well as your website and the YouTube links and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Google Sarah. You can probably find her if you're looking for her. And um, gosh, this was a really good conversation, Sarah. So thank you again for joining us on the TrainRight podcast.
Pleasure. Always happy to have a chat with peeps and to get the message out to everyone to just chill. And going long, by the way, this is my legacy, is not always better. So that's totally my thing. It's like if you just want to do try and enjoy it because you work and a little try is fun for you, don't let people make you think that you have to like basically divorce your family and not see them for like months to train for an Ironman that you don't know that you even want to do and you spent all this money. I do like Ironman, don't get me wrong, but then I enjoy it and not everybody does. And so I just think that, make sure that you're true to what you actually want to do in the sport. That's my legacy.
That's super good advice. Yeah, just start going.
Yeah.
Just try it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
cool. Well, thank you, Sarah.
Pleasure.
All right. So I just got done talking with Sarah Crowley, and she said to talk to you, Jeremiah, about this DIY try going on. Can you tell our listeners more about the details of that?
Well, a DIY try is super exciting end of year promotion from Canyon to encourage people to get out there, get back in shape, race, and they have chances to win prizes. So it's really just born out of the need for getting people active, getting people to dust their bikes off, get in shape, and go do a try of any distance on their own, October 24th. And there are a bunch of great partners on board. And you'll see a big push pretty much here on the third week of September to get people to sign up. So the real kickoff of the campaign is on September 24th. But it'll be ongoing throughout the end of September and deep into October. And we're pretty excited because we're going to revive the Canyon 360 Labs on YouTube along with Dan Amfield and have a bunch of distinguished guests, including Sarah Crowley. And it's just a really neat opportunity to get people motivated to get back out there and stay in shape.
Very cool. So this is like a virtual challenge or like challenge in place sort of thing. Like people train for it and then they do it. They do a what on the 24th?
Whatever they want. That's the thing is, this is just about committing to do triathlon, or in my case, try triathlon. Like, that's kind of the fun thing about this. I've never done one before. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. I've spent an entire career doing endurance athletics, and I've gotten the invite, but this is a good reason to do it, and jump in and be involved. And the idea is any distance triathlon, use the hashtag Canyon DIY try on social media for chances to win awesome prizes. And it's just about stoking your friends up to get out there and do something and stay in shape. A lot of us have good summer fitness from all the training we've been doing, but a few chances to really like test ourselves. So I think the idea here is most people will do Olympic distance or 70.3 distance. I doubt there'll be a whole lot of people that are doing Ironman distance, but there might be a few.
There might be a few.
I think there'll definitely be a few, and I can't wait to see it. But the idea is try from home. So I kind of don't like don't like the term virtual, but I think the term virtual is misleading. It's definitely not as Zwift in your basement type thing. When I think of virtual, that's kind of a little more of that framework. But I'm gonna do
DIY try. I mean, do it yourself. Try
do it yourself at home.
That's perfect. Yeah, cool.
Totally. So I think in my case, I'm looking to do a point to point, and I haven't picked the course yet, but it's going to be really fun. I mean, that's going to be half the fun of this thing.
Well, knowing you, Jeremiah, it's probably going to be a touch on the epic side, I'm guessing. At least the bike leg.
That's my style. I have to do something interesting and just, challenge myself and have fun with it. And I think the neat thing is if it's a do-it-yourself try, you might as well open, your mind a little bit to some things you might do differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and probably, a lot of our listeners listening to this, like, I never thought about that. Do your own triathlon. So if they are curious and they want to prepare for this, whether it's their first triathlon or if they, just have like some general fitness, I know you reached out to me and said, hey, let's build some training programs. I built those. Where could they find those training programs?
Well, those training programs can be found if you search DIY Try on Training Peaks. And also you can search under author, Adam
Yep.
Pulford,
Mm-hmm.
and those will pull right up. And yeah, it's pretty neat opportunity for folks to get a really nice tune-up block. I think just a few good weeks of training will feel good. And, I think it's sometimes just about having a carrot to chase. And anytime when I have a event on the horizon or something to train for or something I told my friends to do, especially, it's like putting a heat underneath the burner. So I think it's going to be really fun. I've already done a couple swims, so I'm just like, giddy, just trying to, find out what's going to happen. It's going to be worth tuning into. I guarantee that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So tuning into, if our listeners want to tune into what is going on with you and Canyon on the socials, where can they find you guys?
Well, you can definitely check us out on Canyon NA's Instagram account,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be some information as well on Facebook. And then the sign up you'll see as links off of the social links. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that we will have multiple different prongs to it. For some really good content on the video side, I'm going to be hosting the 360 Lab sort of try TED Talks with Dan Empfield, who is the architect behind Slow Twitch, the online magazine, so to speak.
Yep.
And yeah, the guy's quite a triathlon legend. And yeah, it's
for sure.
going to be super cool. We'll have a bunch of guests on there. That's going to be on YouTube Live every Friday, starting on September 25th. Yeah, actually October 2nd. So our first episode is on October 2nd. Okay. And we've got a great lineup, sort of cast of characters, so to speak. So it's going to be really neat and honestly a great chance for me to learn and ask a bunch of dumb questions. Of course, we'll have Dan on there asking a bunch of expert questions. And I'm really glad that he'll be sort of backing me up with some, great history. But we'll have Lab 1 will be Intro to DIY Try, cautionary tale from vegan cyclists. We'll also have Tri-Terran, who is a really famous YouTuber. Tri-Terran has got a ton of followers and does some great content. Also, we'll have yourself on there if we're lucky enough. Scott and Carrie Lester, or Scott DeFilippis and Carrie Lester will be on for Lab number 2 on October 9th. October 16th, we've confirmed Lionel Sanders. So really cool. We're going to talk about Lionel's hobbies, like model trains, or whether he does parkour in his off season. I don't know, but should be cool. Sarah Crowley, we're going to have on October 23rd. And then we're going to have an awards and recap on October 30th. With some video highlights and sort of social media highlights and things like that. So it should be really fun. And looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll be sure to put those links and resources in our show notes as well. So for the listeners who, want to win some stuff, get challenged and do your own try, go to those show notes, check out what Jeremiah is cooking over there. And that's yet again, another cool thing that we're queuing up for everybody on the TrainRight podcast as we head into the wintertime of this pandemic. Got to keep you guys going. So Jeremiah, thank you so much for queuing us in on what you guys are doing over there. Super appreciate you guys. And we'll be in touch.
Right on. Thanks, Adam.